Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Worldwide Ham Radio. Today I'm with someone who wears more hats than most hams own radios. Tim Duffy K3LR is a world-class contester, the driving force behind Contest University, the host of the legendary K3LR multi-station, and the CEO of DX Engineering. Today I've invited Tim here in a different role as chairman of the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation, the WWROF. If you've ever submitted a log to CQ Worldwide or WPX, joined a contest webinar, or wondered how the biggest events in radiosport run so smoothly, you've likely benefited from WWROF. Quietly and effectively, they've built much of the behind-the-scenes infrastructure that keeps competitive ham radio running. We'll explore how WWROF came to be, what it does behind the curtain, and where Tim sees the future of radiosport heading. This one's not just for contesters, it's for anyone who cares about the future of amateur radio. But first, Tim is more than a leader in business and contesting. He understands the power of storytelling to strengthen the ham radio community. His early support for Q5 Worldwide Ham Radio and our effort to bring high-quality media into the hobby speaks to that vision. We're very grateful for the DX Engineering sponsorship and for Tim's belief in what we're building. Tim, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Let me start with my thank you for your sponsorship for the Q5 Worldwide Ham Radio channel. You've done wonders for us, and I certainly appreciate that.
Well, we're very proud to partner with you, and the Q5 definitely has a lot of momentum, as does DX Engineering, so we're very, very happy.
So let's hop into the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation. It's quite a mouthful, so I'm going to call it WWROF from here on in. But tell me the genesis. How did that get started, Tim?
So back in 2009, a group of us got together and said, we really need to get a foundation that focuses on things that are important in amateur radio, like contesting, maybe even emergency preparedness, but can fill the gaps and can pivot on a dime. I think that's what WWROF does so well, is that we are a very small, dedicated group of individuals that bring just hundreds of years of experience, not only in amateur radio, which is real important, but in contesting, and also in management and executive services, and we really gel well together, the entire board of directors, and it's worldwide too. We have board members that are youth-oriented, like Delta Kilo 6 Sierra Papa. We have Tina S50 Alpha from Slovenia, John VE3EJ. So we are truly, in addition to the expertise that we have here in the U.S., we are a worldwide board that cares about this hobby.
So Tim, were you filling a vacuum, something that didn't exist at all, or was it more that there were fragmented efforts in a variety of different locations? Which was it, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, Kevin. The fragments were making sure that contest plaques for the CQ contest portfolio got mailed out in a timely fashion, and that sponsors were contacted to make sure that they wanted to continue to sponsor the plaques, that the logs were checked, that the logs were accepted, and there was a communication vehicle for participants in the CQ portfolio of contests so that people could get questions and answers taken care of. So there were a lot of different pieces. But then, when there was a hurricane that affected the island of Puerto Rico, WWROF stepped in and bought a number of generators that are still in use today to help the people in Puerto Rico. So, there were voids and fragments.
So is it fair to say that part of the genesis was CQ Magazine and the fact that they were operating two significant major contests, and there needed to be some sort of, let's call it succession planning for the future, and then you built upon that?
Yes, it was to make sure that it was seamless, Kevin, that when people participated in the CQ family of contests, that everything happened and everything worked, and it was a well-oiled machine. And so there are lots of volunteers that do things like the log checking, do things like the log acceptance, that help with the plaque program itself is a huge undertaking. Hundreds of awards go out every year. Now, let's talk about 2025. In March was the CQWPX phone contest, Kevin. So the results were published over a month ago on the web, and it was a tremendous article that was written by Bud, AA3B, who is the WPX director. But then the other awesome thing is the plaques have already been mailed out for 2025.
I've been noticing this on social media. This is popping up all over the place. There, people are getting them. That's pretty amazing in mid-July.
It is, and it's all done with volunteers. Nobody's getting paid to do this, but that's under the WWROF umbrella. And then WWROF takes sponsoring youth very seriously. We just sponsored the YOTA camp out in Denver, Colorado for Region 2. In Region 1 in Europe, the YOTA camp in France, we stepped up in sponsoring there. We have very vocal contributor in NW3Y that has helped WWROF sponsor these youth activities. And then we also have sponsored Kilo Charlie 2 Golf, who is doing amazing things with propagation forecasting and real-time propagation. And you can go to his website, kc2g.com. He's got a lot of resources when it comes to propagation analysis that's used every day, not just for contests.
So, Tim, you're obviously doing this worldwide. It's in the title, and you've mentioned that. It seems as though part of this was handled by the national organizations in the past. Do you view your work to supplement those national organizations, or are you just, again, I think you said this, trying to be more nimble so you can react more quickly?
You know, originally back in 2009, when WWROF was first getting started, it was to supplement CQ, and they had a lot of activities to run a magazine, and the contests were, you know, an adjunct or a bolt-on. So WWROF came up to speed, but now, you know, once that everything, all the volunteers were in place, and the mission statement of WWROF and a board of directors that meets regularly, is highly engaged, it makes for a seamless experience so that you don't have to worry about whether the contest results are going to be published. They're published very fast on the web now. The awards are sent out. Randy Thompson, K5ZD, has done a tremendous job with online certificates. You can get certificates all the way back. So if you misplaced a certificate or you want a new one, you can print it online. John, N2NC, took on the project here years ago of putting all the results in the databases of these websites. So whether it's WPX or CQ Worldwide, you can go all the way back into the 50s and all the results are there. It's just incredible.
Well, I've got to say, I think it's a genius move that you make those certificates available, easily available, because they just completely cover social media once they're available. And you see it all over the place. But the other thing that I really appreciate, as you know, I talk to some top-level contesters, people like yourself, Randy, Dan, N6MJ. There are a lot of people contesting that don't plan on being first, second, or third. So I see these certificates all the time where somebody came in 12th, and they're just so happy to be able to show that they participated, and this is where they ended up. And I don't know that the old systems allowed for that as much, so I think it's a great move. You know, I want to get into YOTA and MCOM and some of the additional things that WWRF is doing, but I want to stick with contesting just for a second. You run 2 major contests, actually 4 major contests. Is there any idea about maybe getting involved with some of the other major contests and taking them over or helping? Because you guys do such a great job, and you've just mentioned some of the things, but just the websites themselves are so easy to maneuver. And I've got to say, there's some contests I take a look at, and it takes a manual to figure out what's actually happening. So do you have any aspirations to help other contests?
I think that we're very careful to kind of stay in our lane, Kevin. Randy and John Doerr, K1AR and K5ZD, have both done a tremendous job getting these websites to be so functional and so intuitive. So you don't have to have a manual, and you can figure out how to get what you want out of the website. But as far as other contests coming on board, a few years ago, there was what we thought was a really good need, and there is a great need for an FT8, FT4 contest. So we created the Worldwide Digi Contest, which is held in August, and it's in cooperation with the Slovenia Contest Club. And it's a great demonstration of a contest that was just born by WWROF with Slovenia, and together we run this Worldwide Digi, and Ed W0YK does a tremendous job as the contest director, not only of Worldwide Digi, but also the RTTY contests within the CQ family. And then John, N2NC, has just taken on the directorship of the CQ VHF contest, which now runs for 2 weekends. So there's a lot of things there that we've taken on, but I think we're very careful, Kevin, to not overcommit and really get outside the lanes.
Well, it's a good answer, Tim. And I guess I will add, I'm sure you are helping set a standard for other people, so thank you for that. Sticking with the contest questions, you must be more aware than most, being in first of all, with a superstation like you have at K3LR, but also as WWROF, you must be more attuned to some of the conversation about changing contests and evolving contests. What kind of role does the WWROF have in, let's say, the future of contesting and how it evolves?
How contesting evolves, a lot of it is on that user feedback and making sure that the people that are participating and having fun with the contest can communicate their ideas easily to the contest directors. So WWROF provides the platform that allows these contest directors. For instance, the CQ Worldwide contests are under John Doerr, K1AR. Then Bud Trench, AA3B, takes care of the WPX contests, and W0YK on the RIDI contests, and John, N2NC, on the VHF contest. So all of those directors, which are associated with WWROF, are very accessible, and that's how suggestions for rule changes or awards can be brought to the directors, and then major changes to the contest are brought to the WWROF board just as an oversight, just so we don't get caught off guard that, hey, the VHF contest went from 1 weekend to 2 weekends, and they split analog and digital, and what did we think? Hey, that's what N2NC wanted to do, and we fully supported him.
So I hear you loud and clear that you are going to stay in your lane. The WWROF will stay in your lane. But how do you deal with differences of opinion within the contest community? For example, some contests really embrace the assisted category, others do not, for example. How do you tackle that when you know there's these significant differences of opinions with major contests?
That's a great question, because that does come up. For instance, in the WPX contests, the worldwide WPX contests, there is no assisted and unassisted category. It's all one. The single operator can use assistance. In the CQ Worldwide, they can't. There are 2 different categories. I think that it's really good to have different rules for different contests, that not all contests have to be the same. And so you have to read the rules, and in some cases, you're out ahead of things, and you're seeing, well, is this really going to work? And so the WPX contest, by putting them together, assisted and unassisted, it was kind of a bold move, a pioneering move. Some people like it, some people don't. And if the contest, you don't like the contest this weekend, just wait till next weekend because there'll be a different contest. So I think it's great to have different rules and especially different directors that have different ideas.
So how does the WWROF tackle or take positions on things like contest online scoreboard or real-time scoring, for example, two significant evolutions in contesting? Do you take a position where you're advocating for it? Do you take I'm going to watch this and see where it goes approach?
It's more of a watch and see where it goes, and not so much as a steering committee. At our board meeting in May, which was largely in person at Hamvention, we did have a presentation on real-time scoring and real-time log checking, by people that are closer to and focused on that particular aspect of the hobby. We also had presentations from the WRTC 2026 committee and how are they doing, because WWROF is a significant, we gave $25,000, this past year to WRTC. So again, we don't do any of the operations of these things, but we do keep our ears tuned into what's going on. And I think, there are really good, focused people that are determined to make sure that WRTC works and that online scoring works and that online score reporting works. And we're supportive of anything that furthers the art of contesting in amateur radio.
So you bring up an interesting point. You actually have a seat at the table with the WRTC, and that's, I think, probably really important to both organizations. Do you have a seat at the table at any other contesting organizations?
I want to make sure that we're clear. At WRTC, some of the board members of WWROF are on advisory committees or operating committees, but they are not necessarily that they have a voting seat or a WRTC position as such. But there's a lot of advisory committee work that goes on between WWROF and WRTC. So, again, WWROF directors have an immense amount of experience and knowledge. Largely have, 50, 60 years on a given director worth of experience. And that just is an enormous benefit to amateur radio as well as contesting.
So before we started this conversation, I'm embarrassed to say that I felt like the WWROF was all focused on contesting. And then I've discovered since then, through this conversation, but also my research, that there are other things that you're branching off into. You've mentioned YOTA, for example. Tell me more about that. What was that decision like? What was that conversation like at your board meeting? And where else do you think you might go in the future?
I think the future is really bright because we are focused on things that WWROF is very focused on things that can benefit amateur radio as a whole, and then contest activity. And we've certainly seen how new digital modes like FT8 and FT4 have impacted contesting. And most recently, Kevin, we've really got our ears tuned into what's going on the Parks on the Air activations and how POTA activations and POTA chasers, how can they benefit from being integrated into contesting? So I think there's opportunity for WWROF to help out in some of those areas, as we have, like I said, with the MCOM situations that we will take on. But if an opportunity is presented before us, there's a good chance that we know somebody or know how to fundraise to help that particular project within the hobby. And that's how the whole YOTA support came to us, is that these, we understand that getting youth on the air is an extremely important thing in this hobby to maintain it and for the growth of the hobby. And WWROF can help financially, it can help with strategies, it can help with the youth overlays that we have in many of the the worldwide contest portfolios, where we actually celebrate the youth, have awards for youth that get involved.
Tim, just a general question, and you can take this beyond just the contest you oversee. Do you see an increase in contest participation overall?
Yes, there is an increase. In a lot of cases, Kevin, the increase is due to a number of factors. People that are discovering that contesting is fun. It augments some of their other activities like Parks on the Air, like chasing for DXCC, like worked all counties. So there is an augmentation that goes on there. But also, a lot of contest participation is surrounded by the 11-year sunspot cycle. And we're at the peak right now. So that has propelled contests like the WPX contest and the worldwide contest to all-time highs of participation, because when 15 and 10 meters are open, man, this is what we wait for.
Tim, can you speak to the ongoing, I hate to use the word conflict, but the difference in opinion, I'll call it, between contesters and non-contesters? When I came back into the hobby 3 years ago, I was kind of hit in the face with this. And I've got to say, from my point of view, people that are into contesting just have these amazing skills. They probably understand their stations better than anybody else. So I think, from my perspective, there's a lot to learn from a contester, even if I don't want to participate in a contest. That's not always what I hear online. How do you address that?
I think there's always going to be, two sides to that coin, Kevin. The guys that say, hey, that's not for me. I'm really into emergency communications, or I'm really into VE testing. And that's the great thing about the hobby, is there are so many of these kind of sub-hobbies that sit underneath it. Where the conflict can happen is during a worldwide contest, for instance. On the contest bands, it can be hard for a given mode, for instance, if it's a CW contest, maybe, the CW areas are filled up with activity. Well, during the week or the non-contest weekends, activity can be pretty lean. So there's a balance there, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're respectful to all, and contesters aren't looked at as bullies or trying to take away anybody else's fun. I think there's plenty of room, especially when you think of the work bands where there aren't any contests on the work bands. There are safe havens, but every once in a while there can be a dust up, and traditionally life has gone on, but that conflict that you bring up has been around since the beginning of contesting in amateur radio.
Well, I like your answer. There really is room for everybody to find their niche in ham radio. It's when I try to explain ham radio to my friends and family, they want to make it one thing, but it's so many different things. It almost becomes a little scattered when I explain it. My wife's working on my narrative when I explain it, but it's there's so many things that people can do. Tim, you've mentioned a couple times about fundraising. You mentioned $25,000 to the WRTC. Where does the funding for the WWROF come from?
That's a great question, Kevin, because the funding is dependent upon donations. And so there is a donation button on the WWROF.org website where people can donate to WWROF, and then we figure out, as the board of directors of this 501c3, WWROF, we figure out where best to use the money. So donations is the primary source, and it is amazing. Contest clubs and individuals have really done well donating to WWROF to allow us to do these support items and also take care of the infrastructure for the worldwide contests that we sponsor. So donations are important, and we've taken all sorts of donations too, from stocks and things like that, and then estate planning as well. We've recently talked about, and even myself personally, my estate plan includes WWROF. That WWROF, the board of directors and the mission statement of WWROF fits me perfectly for how I want to see, what's left over after all of this, and I'm no longer here. I believe that the directors of WWROF will take and go forward and continue promoting the mission of the things that are important to me.
So are you telling us right now that the K3LR station will go on into perpetuity under the WWROF banner?
No, I'm not saying that. I don't. I don't know what will happen to all this. That's for another show. But at the end of the day, I think that that people should take a look at the WWROF website, Kevin. Take a look at the mission statement. Take a look at the projects that we have funded, whether it be the KC2G propagation project, WRTC, the various YOTA camps, and it has really been a whole lot of things that are important to a lot of active amateur radio operators that WWROF is right in the center of. We're not as vocal as some of the organizations. We're more of a behind the scenes, but I think if you take a look at the directors that are on the website, these are the guys that get stuff done.
That was exactly the expression I just had in my head, that you guys are lean, you get things done, so every dollar spent with the WWROF is going to have an immediate result. Talk to me about the future before we wrap up. What do you think the next 5 to 10 years brings to the WWROF?
I think working with others, other individuals that are not currently involved with WWROF, so some new people, will really benefit contesting and will benefit the mission of WWROF by getting new ideas, new areas where we can help and fill those voids. We obviously think that there are some other organizations like the Northern California DX Foundation that are doing good work, YASME, Indexa, the ARRL. There's room for everybody. WRL, and of course the WRTCs that will continue on after 2026. So where appropriate, WWROF is going to be involved, and our mission for the next 5, 10, 15 years is to make this hobby better.
Tim, I've got to say, every time I talk to you, I feel more and more positive about the hobby. And I went into it feeling positive, but you've got some great enthusiasm for this hobby that we share. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having us, Kevin. And I suggest that anybody watching this program go to www.rof.org, consider a donation, and find out more about what's going on with WWROF.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. This has been Q5 Ham Radio. I've been talking to Tim Duffy, the CEO of DX Engineering and the chairman of WWROF. As Tim said, please check out their website. Consider a donation. 73.